Face Tour. Today's webinar is entitled Fine-Tuning Facebook for Libraries. Your presenter is Laura Solomon. Laura is the Library Services Manager for the Ohio Public Library Information Network and the former Web Applications Manager for Cleveland Public Library. She's been doing web development and design for over 12 years in public libraries and as an independent consultant. I'm now happy to introduce Laura Solomon.
Thank you so much. Hi, everybody. I'm going to jump right into a whole bunch of Facebook stuff today. And before I even start with that, though, you do have a little icon with the hand that you can raise, and I'm going to ask you to click that right now if you have a Facebook account for your library. I just want kind of a show of hands. Who here has a Facebook account? This is not your personal Facebook account, but for your library. Hands, 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 hands. Okay, just about everybody. Okay, great. Thank you very much. And of course, if you're not on Facebook, well, here's my reaction at this point. Although I will also be the first to tell you that if you don't think that's where your library should be, that it may not be. I am actually not a Facebook evangelist. Even if I were, I don't get any commission from them, so forget it. But this presentation really is not about convincing anyone to put their library on Facebook. If your library is doing social media, however, this is simply the #1 spot to be, period. And so this presentation is really making an assumption that your library is either already there or you're about to launch a Facebook presence. And having said that, though, here are some facts that might just blow you away if you weren't already aware of them. Facebook, if it were a country, would actually be the 3rd largest in the world, right behind China and India, respectively. As of the end of March of this year, they have over 901 million active users. So they're getting close to 1 billion users, which is amazing. What's more amazing, I think, though, is, I think accumulating large numbers is certainly a feat, but what's more amazing and I think more important is that more than 50% of that nearly 1 billion users log into Facebook every day. So more than half of these people are not just simply creating Facebook accounts because they're curious, they're actively using Facebook, and they use it a lot. And here in the States, I don't know about you, how many of you are addicted to Facebook? Be honest, put those little hands up, because mine would be up. I would be. I spend way too much time on Facebook. Anybody else? Nobody else wants to admit it. Anybody else spend way too much time on Facebook? A few people, I'm sure. But these are stats for the U.S. specifically. And we spend at least oh, I'm seeing the tabs, the comments here. Great, yes, it's my job. Yeah, lots of us. As you can see from the slide, obviously, we're spending nearly 8 hours a month. Now, honestly, I think that's kind of low, and I think if we looked at it now, it would probably be even higher. But a lot of us spend a lot of time on Facebook. Oh, well, look at all these hands. It takes a little time for them to show up on my screen. Wow. Okay, so you're not alone. If that's any consolation, we're all spending what probably amounts to way too much time on Facebook. Something else to consider is the rate at which small businesses have adopted Facebook. You know, there was this whole thing way back in the day, although that day wasn't all that long ago, where it used to be, oh, if your business didn't have a website, it was kind of like not being in the yellow pages. Well, now we're kind of getting to the point where not being on Facebook is kind of like not having a website and therefore not being in the yellow pages, which may or may not matter anymore. In 2010, 50% of businesses in the U.S. were using Facebook, 50%, and that's 2010. By 2011, that rate rose 20%. That's a huge jump in a year. It's a 70% to use Facebook for their marketing, and I bet anything, I'd put money on it. Within 5 years, you're going to see a nearly 100% adoption rate, and I think so. If your library is not there, there's very easily stats to support picking Facebook as sort of the place to be. Now, that doesn't mean it's necessarily right for your library, and again, I'm not going to evangelize about it. But I want you to give some thought to to the decision to use Facebook. I think for many libraries, the decision to use Facebook is sort of a no-brainer. What takes more thought is how to use it so that there's some objective result. Because too often, libraries jump on Facebook because it's so popular. I mean, there's this hype cycle and you know, this wagon we all kind of jump on when things get big, and Pinterest is the latest thing we're all jumping on. But we all jump on these things, and there's often not a plan. We don't really understand what to do with it, or sometimes even how to properly maintain it. And I think another off-putting factor for many libraries is that they can be intimidated, too, by the frequency of changes to the Facebook interface. Just as a quick example, Timeline, love it or hate it, put it in the comments. Love it, hate it, don't care. What do you think about Timeline? Put it in the comments for all participants. Meh, hate it, hate it. Hate it with an exclamation point, not sure what to do. Black, like it, don't care, don't like. Hate Timeline, growing on me. Hate it for the library, love it. Oh, that passed by me. Wow, lots of comments. But you can see that this runs the entire gamut. And every time Facebook makes a change to the interface, this is exactly what happens, is that people throw up their arms or raise arms or get up in arms, and they get very upset about it. And of course, every time they change the format, you see these groups and these petitions forming on Facebook, and, you know, oh, change it back, we hate it, we hate it. We don't know what's coming down the pike with Facebook, and honestly, Mark Zuckerberg doesn't care what we think anyway. Historically, libraries have been, at least in the past, about permanence, about preservation. And almost everything about social media is contrary to that. Every time we do work on Facebook, we're basically building on a foundation of sand. And that can be very uncomfortable for people who are sort of rooted in this traditional role that librarianship has. But the fact that Facebook often rearranges and changes its look and functionality can throw the less adaptable of us for a loop, because change is rarely comfortable for the end user. What's that quote, everybody wants better, nobody wants change, something like that? Don't let this discourage you, because this is really a clear indicator that Facebook is working to remain relevant. What if they never made changes again? Would you still think that they were a big thing? You count on things to evolve. It's just that the way that Facebook evolves is not comfortable or necessarily the best for everybody. So let's start at the beginning with libraries and Facebook and what you can do or should do. And I think the very first place I have to start, and I found that I often have to start, is this difference right here. And for some of you, this may be a moot point, and for others, it may not. But knowing the difference between a Facebook profile and a Facebook page is absolutely critical. Here's why. Way back in the day, which isn't, again, all that long ago, remember when Facebook first opened up to the general public, the only option was basically to join Facebook as an individual. And so if you were a library, you had to join Facebook as a person. You had to pick a birth date and a gender. And I know for the place where I work, Oakland, the Ohio Public Library Information Network, this was the case with us. We joined Facebook way back in the day, and we had to decide whether or not Oakland was male or female, which is an odd decision to make for an organization, and give it, you know, the birth date, okay, the date we were founded, we can kind of fudge that. And then you have this thing with friends, and that's a major difference, as you can see. A profile has friends, and a page has, well, they used to call them fans. Now they're called likes, which is really like, okay, so what does that make the people who like the page likers? I don't know. But a profile has friends. So if you still have one of these, I'm going to talk about that in a minute, if you still have friends, your library has friends, you have a profile. Profile, for those of us who are on Facebook as individuals, this may not matter too much. You can only have up to 5,000 friends. Not a big deal for most people. We probably don't even want 5,000 friends. But for a library, that could be an issue. A page doesn't have a limit on how many people can like it. Profiles also don't have analytics, and we're going to talk about Insights, the built-in analytics capability for Facebook. That does come with a page, and that's very important for a library to have. It's harder to promote, I think, a profile. There's not as many, if any, widgets to really you can embed in your blog or in your website. But the most important difference, if your library has a profile, because you have, remember, most important way to tell that, quickest way to tell that is friends. If you have friends, you're actually in violation of Facebook's terms of service. When they introduced the page as a concept for businesses and organizations, they made this pretty clear in their terms of service, and of course none of us really read those, right? But you're not supposed to be on there with a profile. You have to switch this to a page. I don't know if this is an issue for any of you. If it is, email me and I can talk you through or give you some information about that switch that we went through at Oakland, because when we realized we're in violation of terms of service, we had to go through this, and it was sort of complex and it's not fun. It could almost be a presentation all by itself. But keep that in mind. If your library currently has friends rather than likes, you're in violation of the terms of service, which means that at any given time, Facebook can come and shut you down. Not a cool thing. So keep that in mind. If you do need to make this switch, you might be wringing your hair or your hands right now. There are a couple of methods whereby you can do that. One of them is automated, which sounds really cool. You'd think that it would be, oh, okay, I'll just click some buttons and Facebook will take care of it, but actually the automated method is terrible, and I'm not going to cover it. Again, if you have specific questions, I'd be happy to answer those for you. I find a lot of libraries now don't have this issue, but if you do, I'll cover it. But suffice it to say that the automated method actually won't save you any time, and it actually still leaves you in violation of the terms of service. So if you see that option floating around and you don't get your hopes up, that's all I'm going to say for now. So let's say you're on Facebook or you've been on Facebook and you're wondering, well, okay, we're here, ta-da, now what? Well, that's a big question, right? What do you do now? Because this reality sort of sets in that you've got to do something. Here's sort of a depressing statistic to start things off with, because I'm not known as nice Laura, I'm mean Laura. From 2010 to 2012, the percentage of Americans following any brand or organization on a social network has gone from 16% to 33%. You might say, well, that's not depressing. That's a really sharp incline. That's good. That means more people are going to like the library. But you have to kind of look at it from the other side of the coin in the opposite perspective. It's really 2/3 of people in this country on social networks don't follow brands and organizations. They just don't. So this number is going to increase, but it's not quite probably where you were hoping for. So kind of keeping that in the back of your mind, realize that you may not be as successful as you want to be. Most people often just don't want to follow brands and organizations. So if things are going a little slowly, I guess is what I'm saying, don't despair. This is something that everyone is coping with who's on Facebook as an organization, as a brand. So don't panic, but this is the reality that we're all kind of dealing with. Now, there's definitely some strategies that you should use that are going to help some things, and I'm going to talk about quite a few of those. And one of the very first ones I want to talk about is getting a vanity URL. If you do not do this, your URL for your library looks kind of like the one at the top there. It's red on my screen, which is basically a bunch of gobbledygook that's very hard to memorize. It's much easier to put out there, find us on Facebook at facebook.com/something. Now, having said that, if you take a look at the URL on the bottom, I'm going to share a little story with you. And that is, we did not really want it to be oakland.org. That seems rather odd to have facebook.com/oakland.org. But we found out something about usernames and changing them on Facebook the hard way. When we originally set up our account on Facebook, our username or vanity URL was facebook.com/Oakland, which makes a heck of a lot more sense. It's easy to remember. When we transferred our account to a page from being a profile, because remember we found out we were in violation of the terms of service, we wanted to keep that, and we couldn't because it was basically a brand new entity. We couldn't transfer it from one place to another, so keep that in mind. And worse yet, even though we got rid of the Oakland profile, it was still as if it was taken. Facebook will not allow any duplication of the username. So even though nobody was using Oakland anymore, we couldn't have it. So we had to pick up something else. And the other thing about usernames or vanity URLs is you're only allowed to change it once. So think very carefully when you go to do this, because if you do something on a whim and you want to change it later, you may not be able to. Facebook also gives us, especially in the newer formats, the ability to put in a whole bunch of information about our libraries. And it's really important that you be complete here. It's very easy to leave things sort of open and not worry about it and go, oh, you know, I don't want to fill in the description. Everybody knows we're the library. You really need to do this. And one of the nice features that you get now with the pages is this hours feature. And if you put in all of your hours, you'll be able to, Facebook actually will track the hours you're open compared to the actual time. So it'll show if you're open or not on a Facebook page if you include this feature. So this is really nice. Make sure you include all this stuff. I'm going to talk a little bit later also about why this is important, but just kind of keep that at the back of your head, that you really need to be complete when you're filling out the about stuff on your page. One of the newer features too, and they just changed how this works. I love Facebook, right? A week ago I was about ready to cry, so this has changed a little bit. So now I have a new screenshot. But one of the things that Facebook has allowed in the past year or so is the ability to post to Facebook as an organization. So if I post something, here's my What Does This Mean to Me, Laura blog page. If I can post to this as What Does This Mean to Me, Laura, not necessarily as Laura Solomon, the individual. Same thing for our Oplin page, as I can post to it as Oplin. I don't have to be Laura. So basically what they're calling it now, and this is the change I just mentioned, is that they're calling it voice. You can change your voice on Facebook. So you can post to the page as the page rather than you as the administrator. And this can really help in terms of keeping authoring and branding consistent, especially if your library's page has more than one admin. And you should have more than one admin, because if you get run over by a bus, or you're incapacitated or gone for some reason, nobody else is going to have access to administer your page. So make sure there's at least one other person to administer your page. But while this feature is very helpful, it can actually also cause some issues for the unwary. I'll show you an example of that later in the presentation. You need to make sure that you're in the proper settings when you post stuff, or you may inadvertently be posting things as the wrong entity. You may be posting things personally as the library and vice versa. Another thing about admins, show them. Show them. You can choose which to feature, and I'll show you that in just a minute. But show your administrators. This is a good idea for any library, regardless of how many administrators you have. Showing who's in charge helps add an element of transparency and also of credibility. Because remember, it's fairly easy for anyone to set up a page and say, hey, I'm the library. There's not a whole lot of checking going on. So the burden of credibility is on you. So the more that you can fill in that about, the more credible you seem. Your page owners or administrators or people who actually work at the library, this is important stuff. So show your page admins. It also provides a human face, which is really important in social media. Speaking of administrators, this is also very new within the last month or so. Facebook has now allowed different kinds of Facebook page administrators. And it used to be that if you were a Facebook page administrator, you pretty much had every power available, and if somebody else was a Facebook page administrator, they pretty much got all the same powers, and so it was kind of an all or nothing scenario. With the new roles, this is not necessarily the case. So you can see the breakdown here. There's actually now 5 different roles, all the way from manager down to insights analyst. And I think that's particularly handy for libraries. Oftentimes, we have people who need to see stats, but we don't necessarily want them to have power over the page and post stuff. This is a really nice way to kind of separate it out and give people particular powers and particular kinds of access. So this is, I think, a real bonus. Also, talking about administrators and likes, your library will undoubtedly want to like some other pages. You should at least be liking local businesses around you, local organizations that you partner with. If you're in a university, you may want to like other department pages. You should be at least liking things where you go, oh yeah, they should be connected. That makes some sense. At the very least, you should be doing that. And you can choose which of these to feature on the left side of your page by going to the admin panel and selecting featured from the left menu. You can do the same thing with page owners. The nice thing about this is that these will show up for the public. I mean, people can see all of your likes. So it doesn't really matter, you know, but the nice thing is these are the ones that people immediately see. So you may want to rotate these occasionally, so that particularly if you've got, you know, a whole lot of people or organizations that your library partners with, you may want to kind of rotate those around so that you're not always featuring the same partner. Come here, button. Okay. Sorry, things a little slow. This is also relatively new. I'm not sure a lot of people realize that this was added. This was actually in the last couple of weeks or so. Oh, and Ann answered her question. Great. Ann, can you share that with everyone? Because I'd have to actually go look at the page and to remember where it is. It's one of those things I need a visual cue. But she was asking about where you can find the admin roles to tweak them. So maybe Ann can kind of put that in the chat so that she can share that with everyone. Scheduling posts is finally, this is really long overdue, has come to Facebook. And, you know, for the longest time, the only way to schedule posts ahead of time was to use some kind of third-party application like TweetDeck or Hootsuite or something along those lines. Now you can actually put stuff in Facebook and have it show up at a later time, which is wonderful. You need, though, to at least, I found this out the first time I went to use it, you have to have at least entered the founding date as a milestone. I'll talk about milestones in just a minute, in your timeline. This is kind of a timeline-related thing. If the library, or I'm sorry, if Facebook doesn't know when your organization was founded, it will not allow you, for some reason, to do scheduled posts. I'm not sure why that is, but there it is. If you choose a date in the past, the post will appear at the appropriate place in your page's timeline. So if you actually want to post something as an event in the past, you can do that, and it will show up on your timeline, which is kind of interesting. What about questions? How many of you like seeing these in your timeline? You can just type in the chat. Yes, no, can't stand them. Ugh, no. Kinda, nope, yes. Sometimes of them hate them, yes, no. Oh, real mixed bunch. No thanks. Only when they're unique, not the same stuff we always see. Good point. Seems like it would help. No opinion, don't work. Yeah. Just like you can share news, photos, videos, etc., you can now ask a poll question to your library's Facebook fans. And when people respond to the poll, it shows up in their news feeds on their walls, which can theoretically draw more attention to the library. It's a very good tool for soliciting informal feedback. But I'll tell you, and the responses here kind of verify this, at least to some extent. I think my informal poll of folks I know and my own feelings is that questions has become the new poking. Like when it first came out, it got everywhere. It was everywhere, and now everybody hates it. Well, not everybody, obviously, looking at this group, and that's fine. But a lot of people do feel rather strongly about it, that it's annoying. Be very wary of asking generic, boring questions like, which is your favorite book? If I see another one of those, I'm going to run screaming into the night. Know what you're going to do with these responses. Don't do this because, okay, it's Thursday. I have to do something on Facebook. Okay, well, oh, I know. I will ask a poll question. That will get our engagement up. That will do it. No, that is not a good reason. That's like poking, so don't do it. Stop. Know what you're going to do with the responses. Yeah, you can do it for some cutesy things, but think about the point of this. I mean, people are going to take their time, and granted, it doesn't take a whole lot of time to do one of these, but people's attention is so fractured now. Think about what the end point of this is. Don't use questions as simply a way to do something on Facebook because you're out of ideas. Like you know, Susan asked a good question. What is poking? You know, it's very hard. I'm not even sure that poking is a regular feature of Facebook. Maybe I'm dating myself. That's very interesting. Poking was kind of like a way, I don't know if pinging helps any. It was, it's still, Allison says it's still there. Suffice it to say it's really annoying and everybody hates it, except for Amelia. Sorry, Amelia, I'm picking on her. It's not a popular activity anymore. It was unique. It was like so many other things that happen, I think, on the web where it's unique and kind of interesting when it first came out, and then it gets overused, and then people don't like it anymore. And I think Facebook questions has rapidly become something along the same lines. What about custom landing pages? While it's technically possible to do a lot of custom things with Facebook, including some complex functionality typically associated with websites, embedding all sorts of interesting things, it's probably, in fact, almost certainly not worth the time to do it. BrandGlue, a company that manages pages for other companies, has studied the issue by mining Facebook API, application programming interface, in case you care, data, and what they found, and this number is not made up, this is real, 99.5% of all comments on status updates actually come from people's news feeds, not directly on a company's Facebook page. And honestly, this should not be a surprise to anyone, because the only time someone sees a page, including your library's page, the only time they see it, for the most part, is when they click the like button, and then they never come back. There's never a reason to, because once they click the like button, all your stuff shows up on their wall. It's being pushed out to them. There's no reason for them to come back. So if you're getting these ideas about, embedded apps and all sorts of things on your page, forget it. It's not worth your time. There are a lot of them out there, but very few of them are going to make any difference. So timeline, the thing you either love or hate. We all kind of have this love-hate relationship with Facebook anyway. I always say, oh, I'm not going to spend as much time on Facebook, and yet here I am yet again on Facebook. Timeline actually has some stuff that's very useful and very good for libraries. Love it or hate it. It's here to stay. It's not going to go away like we know Zuckerberg doesn't care anyway. So let's make the best of it, and there's definitely some stuff here I think that libraries can use. The first interesting thing that you should know about timeline comes from a study from an analytics firm called SoTrender out of London. And what they found is that posts, the lifespan of content is actually longer on timeline. The original study they did, they found before April 1st of this year, half of all comments made on a brand's Facebook page were made within the first hour. So basically the lifespan of content or any engagement with content came within the first hour, and after that, that was it. Since all brands were required to switch over to timeline, that window has extended to 2.5 hours. They also found a 13% increase in the average number of people that interacted with the post. So things stay up there longer, they get more engagement. And I'm sure that has to do with the fact that it's a two-column layout. There's more room for stuff. Stuff is not moving down the wall quite as quickly. So that's a good thing. Now there's also apps. Now of course there were apps with Facebook before, but now they show up a little differently in the timeline, as you can see here. This is Worthington Libraries from Ohio. According to an eye tracking study that was part of the previous SoTrender study I just mentioned, apps actually get more visibility than everything below them on a timeline. And they're pretty visible. I mean, they're right there in that right-hand corner. They're right below the cover image. And you can rearrange the order of them. You can choose a custom thumbnail for them. However, another study, here's the bad news. Another eye movement study, a company called Simple Usability, found that users rarely, if ever, interact with these. They see them, lots of people see them, but nobody's clicking on them. So don't get too excited about this. That may change as people continue to get accustomed to the timeline format, but for right now, don't spend a lot of time and energy on these because it's just kind of a waste until at least people kind of become acquainted with it. A couple other things I think that may sell you on timeline or not, highlighting and pinning. Facebook really is no longer quite such a chronological river of posts. You can opt to draw more attention to a single post, for example, by highlighting it. And this means you can basically make it cover both columns. So it's going to take up more eyeball space. And give people sort of something like, okay, this is more important. It takes up more space. There's also the pin to top option, which is shown in the screenshot here, which can help extend the life of your content, because basically what it does is it literally it pins it to the top of the timeline so that nothing else that's new is going to push it down, because normally new content pushes old content down. Pinning to the top keeps it at the top and makes it 2 columns wide. Facebook actually officially recommends that you use this option at least once a week, which I found very interesting. At least once a week you should be pinning something. So that's just something to consider. Red Bull pinned a month-old video of its sponsored skier, his name's Bobby Brown, to its Facebook brand page, and it actually took the post from 10,000 likes to 12,000 likes. Social media users, we're all bombarded, right, with information 24/7. So pinning helps kind of cut through the noise and ensure that your fans are more likely to see a post. Milestones, I sort of alluded to these before when I talked about the founding of Oakland and needing to put these in your timeline. Timeline really has become much more of what I think is a digital scrapbook. And it's a great way to tell the story of your library. Here's another example from Worthington Libraries. They've put in their milestone of founded, and they've even included an early photo, which I think is great. And this is a great way for people to become acquainted with your library and the history of your library. And I certainly can be a much more visual method and more interesting method than just a whole bunch of text on your website. So give it some consideration. Fill in these milestones. It's a great way to make it easy for people to kind of browse your history and maybe even like your library. So after all that, what works? What works? First, if you haven't already, and I saw someone in the comments way back mention this, you need to be thinking a lot more about photos. Timeline is much more image focused than early iterations of brand pages. It's much more heavily focused on images. And of course, you've got this big cover image up here, right? This is hard to miss. And a recent eye tracking study found people pay far more attention to this cover photo than any content on the wall, which is no surprise. I mean, heck, it's the biggest thing on there, and it's a picture, you know, for heaven's sake. So no surprises there. Surprising to study to confirm that, but I guess somebody did it. So people see this. That's the bottom line. They're going to see it. That URL at the bottom is a nice cheat sheet to tell you the size of this particular picture for when you upload it. And then there's also the profile picture, which is actually this. I'm highlighting it very badly with a yellow highlighter right now. That is what's called the profile picture as opposed to the cover picture, which is the big one. The profile picture should always be your logo. If your library doesn't have a logo, that's a whole different problem. And keep in mind, your building is not your logo. That's a whole different presentation. But if your library, assuming your library has a logo, this is where it should go, is in this box. And what's interesting about the profile picture is that its size is that you have to upload at. It has to be at least 180 by 180. So it's definitely a square. Even though it's smaller than that in the finished product, Facebook will not allow you to upload it smaller than 180 by 180. They do not trust us to do any cropping or resizing. They want to do it. So just be aware that they're going to completely mess with it when you upload it, or if you try to upload something too small, it's not going to let you. Now this cover photo here, a lot of people don't realize that there's stuff in the terms of service that affect pages about this cover photo. There's actually stuff you cannot put in a cover photo under Facebook's terms of service. These include contact information like your website address, email address, mailing address, any kind of information that should go in your page's about section is basically, you can't do it. It's in violation of their TOS. So that's why I was saying earlier, you really need to fill that stuff out because you're not supposed to put any of it in your cover photo, which includes all sorts of things that you might normally think about putting there. You also can't make any references to Facebook features like or share. You can't draw, for example, a picture to the like button, a big arrow saying like us on Facebook. You're not allowed to do that. You also can't do any calls to action. Like go get it, like you know, get it now, tell your friends, check us out. You can't do that, which is upsetting. So anyway, just be aware of that. That might not sell you on timeline so much. Sure wouldn't me. As far as photos go, Facebook has definitely been becoming more photo friendly, and of course the entire web is sort of moving towards this visual format. I mean, Pinterest, I think, and Instagram are huge examples of how we're just moving quickly to this mostly visual web, and Facebook is not far behind. Not too long ago, they introduced the Lightbox format that you see here. This is actually the Seattle Public Library that you see here, using it for local history stuff, which I think is a great use. Facebook also has allowed higher resolution photos, which makes this sort of thing even better. Now you can upload to 2048 pixels wide. I can't remember what the old one was, but this is significantly larger. Another thing that you can do is to use albums. Use albums. Rather than just uploading one photo here and there. You're actually better off uploading a bunch of photos as an album. So if you're taking pictures from, say, your summer reading finale, just to use a public library example, upload them all at once, because what happens is Facebook creates essentially what you're seeing here. This is actually from MTV Roadies, their Facebook page. When they did this, they actually increased their clicks on their photos by, get this, 1,290%. That's 1290% sign, because people want to click on things where there's more than one photo. When you post a single photo, a fan sees everything right from the single thumbnail in their newsfeed. But when you post multiple photos, Facebook automatically converts it to an album and shows a main image and thumbnails for the first 3 photos. Fans were curious to see what the rest of the photos were, so they clicked on it. So this is a really interesting strategy that I think any library can use. Really important, and now much easier with scheduled posts on Facebook, time it properly. A 2011 study by Buddy Media found that Facebook engagement actually peaks at 3 different times of the day, and it should be no big surprise what these are. 7 o'clock in the morning, we all get up and we check our Facebook. And some of us check Facebook before we even put our feet on the floor in the morning. So that is certainly not hard to tell why that is. 5 o'clock, we all get off of work, and what do? We all go check Facebook. And then at 11 o'clock, what do we do before we go to bed? We check Facebook. We're a bunch of Facebook addicts, and the data is there to prove it. So if your library is posting all of its updates during a typical 9 to 5 workday, it's really missing prime time on Facebook. A study found that brands that post outside of regular business hours actually get up to a 20% higher engagement rate. So if you want more people to see your stuff and you want more people to respond to it, don't post 9 to 5. Just don't, because they're not looking at it. A lot of the folks can't look at it because they're at work. The length of the post also matters. Short is better. Buddy Media found basically shorter is better. Posts with 80 characters or less got 27% more engagement. Keep it short and simple. Remember, we all have the attention span of a gnat now. So yes, it is actually on the slide, Karina. It is 5 p.m. EST. But I'm going to guess if you're in California and you're posting for California folks that would probably still apply just to your own time zone. So consider the length of it. Don't write big paragraphs of stuff. Nobody reads that on the web anyway. If you didn't know that, then you need to know that before I come hunt you down. We're not reading large paragraphs of text, so don't. You also want to use the big right words when you're asking for feedback. And don't be afraid to ask for feedback. Use the right words. Here they are in order. Ready? It's not on the slide because I guess they didn't show up on the slide when they got uploaded. But number 1, post. Ask people to post comments. Number 2, comment. Second preference. People prefer post to comment. And lastly, tell us. Use the right words when you're asking for feedback, and people are more likely to give you feedback. So ask people to post things. Also, don't ask things that require answers to the question why. These kinds of requests often seem more invasive to people. They take more time. I don't know about you, but whenever I see a survey and, I'm checking boxes and radio buttons and putting in numbers, and then I get to the end, and often there's a big blank empty box asking me for my feelings on something, at that point I'll usually either skip it if I can or just close down the survey entirely or skip the entire survey because I'm not going to do it. Christina, interesting point. Comment box equals meh or rant. Yeah, don't ask for people for why, because they often don't want to be bothered to tell you. Sad but true. Oh, there we go. These actually work in this. There we go. Aha. These don't work in other software. I will miss that. Okay, cool. Sorry about that. Okay. What else you can do? Focus on visual content. I talked a little bit about photos. Visual content also includes video or photos. The new timeline design is all about being visual, which may require a slight change in your content strategy. But here's the thing. The news feed algorithm, and there is one, just like Facebook has a search algorithm that's super secret and powerful, Facebook has an algorithm for what shows up on your Facebook wall. And that algorithm discriminates heavily against text content. It really likes multimedia. And these are the kinds of things that grab people's attention as well. Lots of us choose to watch more than we read. So it's also, I think, value-added content that people have come to expect, and it's one of the most shared kinds of content, too. So focus on this heavily. You know, it's time to sort of ditch text as your main go-to on Facebook. Lolcats, yes. Hey, people share lolcats. So change it up occasionally. If you're always doing text or you're always doing events, get some other stuff in there. If you're always doing photos, get some videos in there, get some other kinds of content in there. But change it up, because people want to see different things or they're going to get bored quickly. Remember, we now all have the attention span of gnats. Here's an interesting strategy that I thought a library could use that I think was kind of interesting. I think this was 2010, but the NBA did something kind of interesting for like their super fans, I think they called them, people who are really, really big basketball fans, is they had their big superstars make videos thanking an individual fan. And I thought about this, and I thought a library could actually do this. I mean, how many libraries have some kind of well-known, even locally, speaker come in, or, you know, somebody famous, and ask them, could you make a thank you video? Just take a minute, just pull out, you know, a quick video thing. Yeah, and it does let people know you're paying attention. Thank you, Christina. And, you know, I think it would be rather cool, actually. And imagine whoever gets this, whoever the recipient is, you think they're not going to share this with everybody they know? Of course they are. So this is going to help its virality a little bit. Another thing that you can do, memes. Now, I admit that I am sick to death of the keep calm one. I don't know about you. In fact, I was joking with someone the other day, I think even on Facebook, I'd love to see one that says keep calm and quit making signs. I'm tired of it, but it's out there, and don't be afraid of them. There's no reason to be afraid of them, because businesses can have fun too, organizations can have fun too. So the next time you're using Facebook for fun at work, because we all do it, let's admit it, as long as we can, keep your eyes peeled for any memes that might be receiving a lot of comments or interaction from other places on the web, and take a spin at creating your own. Just, you know, give yourself a little leeway to have some fun. There's nothing wrong with fun. One of the most important things you have to do to make Facebook work is not promote it just on Facebook, because you're preaching to the choir. Promote your library in your library's newsletter always, over and over. People need to see a call to action multiple times before they typically act on it. And you know this is true because you hear the same stupid commercials over and over and over. And it's not just because they want to get their brand out in front of you. Yeah, they do. But it's also because they know it takes multiple times hearing the same call to action for you to actually do something about it. Eventually, you're going to get sick of that announcer saying, buy this, do this, and maybe eventually you think, okay, I'll do it. That's what they're hoping for. Include, of course, a link with the Facebook logo on your library's blogs, on your websites. If your library is an online forum, try including a link there while they're actively thinking about the library. Say, thank you for your comment, like us on Facebook. And of course, if they're complaining, that might not be their first thought, but something to consider. Put signs up at the circ desk, at the reference desk. I have always maintained that I would love to see a library say, like us on Facebook, and I'd love to see them put it in bathroom stalls, because a recent poll showed that like almost 40% of people in the U.S. who have the smartphones use them in the bathroom. Well, heck, they're not doing anything else productive, so why shouldn't they like the library? Just a thought. Maybe not one you're having. That's where my brain goes. So things that don't work. Automated posts is not cool, because the algorithm that determines what goes into your newsfeed really likes visual content. It really doesn't like automated posts. And this can save time for your library, but it's really not respectful of the time of the person receiving it. So if you've got stuff cross-posting between Twitter and Facebook, that's kind of a whole other issue, and I'm not fond of that either. Be very careful with this. I know it can save time. This is not the same thing as scheduled posts, by the way. This is specifically referring especially to other apps where it's just posting one thing after another. Another thing that works, come on, sorry, got the highlighter going. Video and photo contests. Now this would seem like a no-brainer, like, yeah, we should do this, but actually it doesn't really work. Peter Yerud, who's the Vice President and General Manager of WebTrend Apps, which is a big platform used by a lot of top brands to engage people on Facebook, points out that uploading photos and videos is really, it's a substantial investment for people. You know, they have to create content. You're basically asking people to do your job is what you're doing, and they don't want to do it with good reason. Now, does that mean you couldn't do like a photo caption contest? That's a quick, easy thing to do, and people don't have to create a photo or a video that takes a lot more time. So just as a thought there, people really don't like it so much. Another thing that people don't like, here we go, like blocking. Now, I haven't seen a library really do this yet, but I'm waiting because so many companies do this that my gut feeling is eventually some library is going to try it. What like blocking is when essentially you can't get to some kind of content from a brand or an organization until you like them. It's basically a blackmail effort. So you like us on Facebook and you get this. And it's basically, you know, coupons, right? I see this all the time with coupons. Come get a coupon. Come get a coupon code. Oh, and yeah, I see people starting to rant in the chat. Yeah, that's like blocking. You know, you're not going to get it unless you like us first. Well, that's pretty mean. And actually, this pretty much guarantees, according to Year, a 50% to a 100% drop-off rate by that particular or for that particular campaign. So don't do this. You've seen companies do it, but then don't follow, I guess is what that is. Another thing, and people will argue all the time about this one, is splitting locations. And this is really one of the most common questions I get from libraries, particularly, you know, of course, libraries that have multiple branches and such, is the idea of having different Facebook pages for different locations. For a lot of businesses, especially ones that have locations within one city or one region, one Facebook brand page makes a lot of sense because it really enhances your branding. It gives you one unified voice, one consistent voice. Now, if you are, you know, a library and you have, I don't know what library would do this, if you had locations in different states, maybe then you have a reason for different pages. But overall, you're better off going with one. You're better off going with one. So this is something I'm going to file under doesn't work, maybe exceptions, but not many. So I want to talk about Facebook Insights, which is the built-in application for metrics. It's really kind of powerful. It's only available to page administrators. And one caveat, your page has to have at least 30 likers, I don't know what we call them anymore, 30 people who like the page before this even becomes accessible to you. So if you have a brand new page, you need to go tell all your friends and everyone you know and all the employees of the library to go like the library on Facebook so you can get access to Insights. The data can be exported as a CSV, a comma separated value file, so you can play with the data in Excel. Yeah, Jeffy, they used to be called fans, but now we've got the like buttons. I don't know. So I want to talk briefly about some of the most important pieces of this because it does quite a bit. Just as far as the overview goes, probably the most important stat that you want to be concerned with is the PTAT. People talking about this. This is a newer stat as far as metrics go for Facebook. And what this is the total number of people that have engaged with your page, whether they liked something, they commented, they shared, they responded to an event. So this assesses engagement beyond the old standards that they had where it was just measuring likes and clicks. So this is pretty much everything, which is why this is such an important stat. The reach is essentially how many unique people have actually seen your content, which is another good thing because you want to see how much of your stuff is actually getting eyeballs. Oh, page engagers. Oh boy. So keep that stat as sort of your frontal stat. The thing you're going to be most concerned about is the PTAT, people talking about this. One of the other pieces I think that is the most valuable when you're managing a Facebook page for a library is the ability to see insights or metrics by post. And this allows you to talk about fine-tuning Facebook. This is really where it happens, because if you want to see which pieces of your content get the most, are seen the most, are engaging people the most, people are talking about this, you know, how far are they going as far as being shared out, that's kind of the virality. All of that is here for you by each post. So you can go, okay, you know, this one's better than this one. You know, this week we posted a picture of a kid at a computer and, you know, not very many people saw it, but the week after that we posted a pic of a kid with a therapy dog and reading to the therapy dog, and that got lots of responses and likes. You go, okay, people really like dogs, let's do more dog stuff. You know, something like that where you can kind of at least try to fine tune it a little bit towards what people are going to respond to. There's also the ability to get demographics. For some libraries, this could be particularly valuable. Now, this is a shot of the demographics for my organization for Oakland. This is no big surprise. We serve Ohio libraries. It's interesting to me that we get, you know, people are probably coming to us by mistake from like Persia and Thailand, but and you know, it's predominantly female. Well, libraries are predominantly female, at least here in Ohio, so no big surprises here. But for your library, this information could be important. Or languages, yes. You know, again, may not be all that relevant for me, but for you, it could be absolutely critical data. Demographic data, this is another restriction, I'll be honest, I don't quite get. You can see this here. To get that PTAT, people talking about us, to get demographic data for that, you can only get it when 30 people were talking about your page in the last 7 days. Well, if you're a small library, chances are good you're never going to reach 30 people talking about you in the last 7 days. So you may not be able to get demographic PTAT data, unfortunately. Another thing not to love about Facebook, and again, we all have that love-hate relationship with Facebook. The most important thing, in my humble opinion, if you want to phrase it that way, to remember about social media statistics is that they are only good for the long term. Now, you can fine-tune your individual kinds of content, but one of the most common questions that I get is, well, how many likes should our library have, or how many comments should we have? And my answer to that is always a question. Well, do you have more than you did last time, or last month, or last week? If the answer is no, you need to go back and look more carefully at what you're doing. As long as things are progressing upwards, you're gold, because that's the goal. You need to compare apples to apples. It's no good comparing those apples to oranges, and like what other libraries are doing. If you're doing better than you were, you're doing it right. That's the only thing I can tell you. There's no magic number here. I wish that there was. It would be much easier. So I want to show you quickly some examples of things I think work and don't work in terms of real-life examples. And here's my first one. This is, of course, Washington, D.C. Library, and you could, even if you didn't know what it was in the title, of course, you look at their great cover photo. I love their cover photo. I think it's very representative for where they are and what they do. And they've got their logo in the profile picture spot. So they're doing it right. So I thought this was really nice. I thought it was nicely coordinated just as a visual piece. This was something interesting I found from Chesapeake Public Library. Notice that they are using their cover photo in a much more creative and dynamic way. And they actually change it out regularly, whereas the DC one I think is fairly static, which is fine. They're doing something more dynamic with this, where they're doing different events. And now, I don't know, can anybody spot the thing here they're doing that they shouldn't be doing, though? To pick on Chesapeake for a little bit. It's not the hours. Yep, it's the phone number. I think Carol got it first. Yep, it's that phone number. You technically cannot put the phone number there, which is a bummer. I know. Now, does that mean that there's Facebook police out there looking at our pages going, oh, they've got a phone number, take them down? The chances are honestly really low. Now, I did not tell you to go do this, but I'm going to tell you that the chances of being caught are probably really low. So, you know, there are certainly worse offenses on Facebook, but just be aware that it is against terms of service. But nonetheless, even without the phone number, I thought this was a very creative use of a cover photo. Now, some things that are not so good, and I've kept these, even though they're not timeline format, these predate slightly the timeline format, I kept them for various reasons because I think they still show some issues. Hope nobody, I don't think anybody here is from Iowa. I hope not. I always should apologize first if I'm picking on anybody's library. But this is, if you look here in the About section, you know, we're all fond of library quotes, right? They're great quotes. Oh, okay, phew, Paula and Kate. Iowans, cover your ears. Oh, there's more states coming, don't worry. They've got a quote here in the About section. Well, that's not really about the library. It doesn't say anything. That's not about you. And honestly, we shouldn't have to guess. Now, I know it's very easy to get into a mindset of, I'm the library, we're the library, you know, and think everybody knows everything about us, but that is not always true. So make sure you use the About stuff and actually pretend people don't know anything about you in the About section. This is actually a library where I used to live. I went back to look at it just out of curiosity, and this was their profile picture, and I was rather stunned because I couldn't tell what the heck this was supposed to be. This isn't particularly representative. I mean, I've had people argue, oh, the people in the picture aren't even dressed appropriately. I'm not sure I care about that. My point was that I look at that and go, well, what has that got to do with the library? And I've been in that library, and I just don't get it. It's not a brand. It's not even like a full picture of the building. People welcome you into a furniture store or restaurant. Exactly. What is it? What's the point of it? So think carefully about these pictures that you're posting up here. Now remember earlier I mentioned it's very, you have to be sort of cautious about what you like on Facebook if you are a page administrator and that you're using the correct voice, right? Because you can post as the library or like things at the library. Here's a prime example. This is from Michigan. I don't know if we had any Michigan folks here, and I don't know if this is still the case. I'm going to hope not. But when I took this screenshot, you can see the problem right away. Now, Jungle Jewels is not exactly the most offensive thing ever, but it's also not the most professional thing to have on your library's page. So make sure that when you're liking things on Facebook that you are doing it as you, as the individual, and not as the administrator. And lastly here, this is what happens when you don't have anything on Facebook, and some people might use this as one of the best arguments to have a presence on Facebook. Because what Facebook does in the absence of anything else pretty much is it scrapes Wikipedia. So Utica has no control over this page. This is something that Facebook created simply by essentially screen scraping Wikipedia. I mean, I'm sure they have some kind of agreement, but nonetheless, that's pretty much what's happened, and this is all coming from Wikipedia. So if there's something incorrect here, the only recourse that Utica really has is to correct Wikipedia and hope that, you know, it shows up here. So they have no control about this, and people are already liking them. There's already 6 people liking this, and it's not even really the library's page. So what does all this mean to me, Laura? And I want to have a few minutes for comments. Remember that Facebook is not about broadcasting a message, and I didn't talk too much about that, but if all you're doing is putting programs out there, you know, come to our program, come to our program, come to our program, you're not providing anything interesting, useful, or even potentially relevant, and you will quickly annoy people. That's not what it's for. It's not a bullhorn. So make sure that you're using, I hate, you know, Engage. Dan Zarella, who's the social media scientist from HubSpot, always calls it like the rainbow and unicorn mentality, and I have to agree. But there is some worth in saying you do have to engage. You do have to talk with people. That's the point. Also remember that your library's Facebook may grow to have a huge, large number of fans if you're lucky, but that doesn't mean that any significant fraction of them are actually going to interact with you. Numbers don't matter if they're not talking with you. So, you know, some people are never going to interact with you at all. So keep that in mind too, that big numbers aren't everything. Lastly, if anyone ever sees you doing your Facebook work for your library and says, quit playing on Facebook, you have my permission to smack them. No, you can't smack them. I guess the HR people will come get me. But I often feel like that. Facebook really does take work. I think the novelty of social media for many of us has already worn off, and it has become, in fact, work. It does take work. It takes thought. It's just like anything else we do in the library. So just keep that in mind also. And then lastly, before I get to questions, because I know there are some, I do have to put in my shameless plug. I do have a book out called Doing Social Media So It Matters, The Librarian's Guide. And the lady in the computer said I could hit you. Okay, as long as you don't use my name, that's fine. The Librarian's Nitty-Gritty Guide to Social Media is coming out this fall and does actually have an entire chapter devoted to fine-tuning Facebook. And in that, I don't believe I say, you know, hit people who make fun of your Facebook work, but maybe it should. You can stalk me here, any of these places, and I'd be happy to take questions. I know I've gone through an awful lot and awful fast, and there's a lot more that I could tell you. So I know there were questions, and some of you were answering questions in line, which I think was wonderful.
Hi, Laura, this is Chuck. You've got enough questions here to do another whole webinar.
Oh, no.
One of the first ones that came in is, do you have a profile that the page is associated with? That's back when you were talking about pages.
Yes. In order to have a page, you have to, there's not the ability to have sort of a generic account to manage a Facebook page. They will not allow it. So let's say you saw, for an example, at Oakland where I work, there were 3 administrators, myself and 2 other gentlemen that I work with. Each of us has a Facebook profile, and you have to have an individual Facebook profile to become a site, or sorry, a page administrator.
Okay. Another question you have was from Becky, and she said, I may be getting ahead of you, but my problem is the page I make changes on doesn't look anything like what the people see.
Like the people see. I think that's something where I might need to see it.
Okay. That was from Becky, and Becky should probably just get a hold of you individually.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's something I'm going to need to actually look at it.
Okay. Carla asked, can you schedule a post you're sharing from another source?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Just give credit. In fact, sharing links to interesting stuff is one of the quickest way to get stuff shared and noticed. Definitely. It makes you more interesting. Nobody likes people who talk just about themselves. You know, and if you're just saying library stuff, you're boring. Share stuff from other places. Absolutely.
Okay. And Kelly asked, our page was recently reclassified as a community page. Can you comment on the pros and cons of community pages versus official pages?
This is something where I'm going to have to go back and look at this, because I actually wrote about this in my second book, but because I don't use them, that is, to be honest, it's not at the top of my mind. I do seem to recall that community pages have limitations that regular pages don't have. One of them may be no analytics, but I'm not positive on that.
And Christina wanted you to define the custom landing page a little bit better.
We don't see them as much anymore, which is probably a good thing. The example that I showed on that slide, I believe, was from Nike, where they had basically embedded some major functionality like they had on their website, and I have to go back and look at it. But the idea was that when someone came to the page, rather than seeing a news feed, is that you would actually see something else. It's almost like a web page embedded in Facebook.
I know we're kind of running out of time going over here, but there's a couple more. One is about photo releases. Several people asked about that. Are people getting them when they're using photos from programs that they're posting on Facebook?
I know that you should have one. I mean, you can't just willy-nilly post pictures of people without their permission. That's not a new thing. Any library should have some kind of photo waiver or release. And now, again, this is the I am not a lawyer piece, but I believe it probably wouldn't hurt to specify also for use on Facebook or at least on the web. They may want to run that by their legal counsel.
Okay, and one last one here. Can you talk about the X amount of people saw this post?
The X amount of people. As a metric, let's see.
This was about halfway through the presentation.
People saw this. There is the reach number, which is the total number of people who have seen content associated with your page. So it kind of gives you a sense of how far your message has traveled. I'm not sure that that's the same stat, though. So for whoever asked that, if they want to ask me individually, I'd be happy to try to clarify that some more.
Okay.
Yep. I think we are out. Well, we are out of time for sure, but I think I speak on behalf of everyone when I say thank you, Laura, for a huge amount of information. And the text chat was fabulous. We will be posting a transcript of all of the text chat with all of the links that were in it and everything. And the archived webinar will be available hopefully later this afternoon. So. Yeah, so thank you all for attending. I hope to see you at the next webinar. And I believe, Laura, do you have another one